I am currently at the University of Texas Medical Center. I wanted to explain my background and what Courtney asked me to do. I used to be in hardcore private practice where you eat what you kill, and after that I transitioned to an employment model in a multidisciplinary setting in Swedish in Seattle. And after that I went into academics briefly in an ivory tower setting, which you see here. Currently I am a community-based academic radiologist, which means we are still academically inclined in terms of having academic performance, but we're situated in the community. It's a hybrid model. So I've done many of the models out there, and there's two ways of looking at that. One is that I'm experienced, or two, people are tired of me and keep pushing me out. But anyway, we'll assume it's the first. What we're going to do in the next 15, 20 minutes or so is look at a few things. Number one, we want to review the data from the 2018 American College of Radiology Human Resources Survey, the Workforce Survey, and I'm proud to announce that as of about 2 hours and 15 minutes ago, it got accepted for publication. We're going to be looking at, in the JACR, so it'll be available to everybody. We're going to look at skill sets that you want to possess no matter which of the models you're looking at. And from a bit of opinion, a bit of databases, things to do to help prepare you and prep you for making yourself marketable to academic positions, private practice, and the employed models. So let's begin by looking at the 2018 American College of Radiology Workforce Survey. These are slides politely available to us from the ACR. I'd like to first of all thank my teammates on the commission for all their hard work and being able to prepare all this. Specific thanks to Jan Cox and Angelica Virgil de Leos, as well as Sage Computing for their help. What we use when we actually survey our practice leaders is something called the PRED, the Practice of Radiology Environment Database. This database is actually across the country, and we identify the leaders, practice leaders within the American College of Radiology. And in specific settings, they are either going to be the managing partner, the chair, the vice chair, or the executive committee member as described by that practice. Our survey methodology is we actually email to the chair, group heads from PRED, specific questions, and then we tabulate them and statistically analyze them and present them as a survey that's available to everybody. Responses this past year were from 367 groups, about 23% of all radiology groups. That accounts for about 10,179 radiologists, roughly 30% of all radiologists. And the numbers have been pretty constant in terms of numbers that have been present in the survey in terms of the overall base from 2016, 17, and 18. So let's get right to it. If we first of all try and look at the workforce survey and actually define it by age demographics, we can see that pretty much all the way from 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, for all the different age categories, things have been pretty constant with a slight trend and increase in number and percentages under age 35. In general, statistically, there has been no significant change. 16% of the workforce is currently under age 35, 31% is between 35 to 45, 28% is between 46 to 55, 19% 56 to 65, and importantly, 7% over age 65, which we'll talk about shortly. Approximately 1/4 or 25% of our radiologist workforce is females. There has been no change in the age distribution by gender, and you have the numbers in front of you for the different age demographics. Interestingly though, and good to see, back in 1991, an ACR survey found that only 13% of our radiologists were females. Subsequently in 2003, this is 18%. We are moving in the right direction where we're seeing more females in our population, which we want to see in the radiology workforce. As a member of the Commission of Diversity, it's nice to see that. 85% of radiologists are full-time. There's a myth that radiologists are not part-time. That's not true consistently. We have about 15% of radiologists that are part-time. Of full-time radiologists, 35% are under the age of 35, while females, while only 12% over the age of 65 were females. 18% of practices reported that radiologists went from full-time to part-time. 75% of practices actually reported having a part-time radiologist. 15% of these radiologists, as we mentioned, were part-time radiologists. This has not significantly changed. The three most common part-time specialties currently, subspecialties, are breast imaging, general radiology, and body imaging. Approximately 10% of males and 26% of females do work part-time. That is different, statistically significant. Of part-time radiologists under 35, 74% are females. And in 1991 ACR survey showed 7% of male and 16% of female radiologists work part-time. So we're seeing a slight increase in the percentage of female radiologists over time who are working part-time. A 2018 survey response also looked at retired radiologists. Approximately 1 out of 5 practices reported that a radiologist had retired from their practice in the last year. That means about 456 to 604 radiologists altogether retired in 2017. Of those retiring, 38% were part-time and 62% were full-time. Interestingly, on a regular basis, we find that about 1 in 5, or 19% of groups, reported that radiologists after retirement were still employed in some capacity by their groups. If we actually look at the types of practices currently in the United States, and again, this has remained relatively constant, the Human Resource Workforce Survey defines 5 types of practices: private practice, academic, hospital, multi-specialty clinic, and corporate employee. What we're seeing is, even though there's slight variation, consistently approximately half of current physicians right now are in private practice, and the other half are some sort of employment model. About a quarter in academics, roughly right now, about 12% in hospital settings, and multi-specialty clinics about 10%, and lastly in the corporate employee model, 6%. And again, 46% or half are in private practice, and about a quarter of upcoming jobs are predicted to be in academics. If we look at the trends of specialties over time, what we're seeing is over the time from 2012 to 18, one specific drop in the number of general radiologists which are being hired from 36% back in 2012 down to about 8% in 2018. Now, one of the things we have consistently found that what makes a survey so valuable to our members, including our residents and fellows, is that we're highly predictable in terms of what the market will do the following year. That's for 6 consecutive years now. I've highlighted some of the things that we were kind of surprised with. In breast imaging, we planned to hire, or at least we were told by groups they were planning to hire 218 radiologists, and they actually hired about 260. Musculoskeletal went up from 158 to 187. As we talked about before, general radiologists seem to be in terms of decline in terms of hiring. 136 were initially forecasted, and it turned out only to be at 48. Interventional neuro, again, down from 48 forecasted to hire initially, and ultimately only 3 were hired. 45% of newly hired radiologists moved from another job. 55% were first-time hires post-training. Of first-time hires post-training, 8% had no fellowship training. Of newly hired radiologists who moved from another job, 7% had no fellowship training. Here's one of the bottom line slides for you. Practice reported hiring of 1,434 to about 1,861 radiologists in 2017. In 2018, they plan to hire 1,393 to 1,808 radiologists, roughly. So the market is showing a slight decrease, but only about 2%, as we'll talk about. I'm putting this up for you to look at. The ACR Human Resource Workforce Survey specifically categorizes states and the geographic locations as here. It doesn't necessarily manage other stratifications, but this is just leaving it up here for a second so you can see which state you're in now or which state you're maybe potentially interested or region you're interested in moving to. If we look at the trends by region, in 2017, only 12% of the workforce was hired in the New England and Mid-Atlantic states, and going up to about 27% in the southern states. The forecast in 2018 was about the same, with again New England having the lowest number of job openings and the South and Southwest having the most. If we look at hiring by practice type, it's pretty consistent. About 43% of jobs, again, will likely be in the private practice setting, 29% in academic settings, and the rest, as you can see in front of you. So essentially, there will be more job openings in 2018 in private practice and academic university practices, similar to what we saw in 2017. Most important subspecialty needs of groups, 21% of respondents, if they actually asked the practice leaders, 21% selected breast imaging as one of the top 3 needs. And the other specialties that were in high demand were neuroradiology, general interventional radiology, and musculoskeletal. If we actually looked at the importance of having a fellowship in a specific area, this is interesting. The MSK is the one by the practice leaders where they really wanted somebody, 82% of the time, it was very important to them to have somebody who's fellowship trained, with neuro number 2, interventional number 3, and breast imaging 4th at 73%, and so forth down the road. When we looked at this statistically using chi-squared analysis, We found that there was no statistical difference essentially between 2017 and 2018 between the sampling, no significant difference between what they were sent in the survey, implying that the results are representative of all radiology practices, and number of hires, again, were not significantly significant with a p-value of 0.94. Also, the workforce survey, again, can be used for predicting and are reliable by all statistical analysis. Our conclusions demonstrate that our hiring projections for 2017 were again accurate. The difference between the actual 2017 and projected hiring for 2017 is not that significant because of the p-value is 0.94. We predict somewhere between 1,400 to 1,800 job openings roughly in this year. Projected number to be hired in 2018 is a 2.9% decrease, which is probably not that significantly different given this variation you expect from surveys. And the trend just shows a minimal decrease in hiring from 2017. However, the workforce needs may change, specifically if there's retirement of senior group members between 56 to 65, where there's 19%, or over 65, where there's 7%. And again, the percentage of female radiologists seems to be higher in younger age groups as compared to older radiologists. Now, in terms of skill set, some of this is subjective, some of this objective based on articles written by the Commission as well as other sources. The number one thing I'd recommend, irrespective of private practice or academics, wherever your aspirations may be, use your residency last year and use your fellowship to become strong in your area that you choose to choose, because you will never have that opportunity again. And as we'll talk about, even in academics, one of the things they look for is your expertise in your specialty. You never have a second chance to make impression. I wouldn't talk about your next job right away when you start your new job or your new fellowship. At least acclimate a little bit and make an impression. A common misconception is everybody's CVs are perfect. I can tell you from having received CVs from multiple applicants at multiple stages of their career, you can never spell check enough. Have it proofread by somebody independent of you. If necessary, don't be shy to use a professional career coach. They're very helpful. And if you don't know the difference between a resume and a cover letter, make sure you ask somebody and have them both prep for different types of positions. In terms of your references, fundamentals, know who your friends are. Attendings are very helpful. Co-trainees are also going to be very helpful. When you start looking for a job, cast your network early and wide. Colleagues from residency and fellowship can be huge. Societies such as this, when we have a great opportunity to network with each other, it's a great opportunity to learn about jobs. One of the best networking opportunities, if you had a positive relationship with older residents or more senior residents in your training or fellowships, are good often sources of jobs that you'll hear about. Social media is very valuable, and sometimes people use job seeker websites or even cold calls that have been successful. Don't be shy to ask colleagues you work with in surgery or in other specialties. They may know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who has a job. Remember, it takes one contact to recommend one job for that one job to be your job. That's all it takes. So the more contacts you have, the more job opportunities you hear about, the more likelihood you're going to land a good job. Also, I will tell you, and this applies to all stages of careers, interview training can be the greatest weakness. We'll talk about that shortly. Practice videotaping is not a bad idea if it's accessible to you, and prep with your portfolio. Now, for academics, there's a brilliant article by Smith et al. In Academic Radiology in 2015, for those of you interested in academic career, where they actually surveyed, and they got 127 active SCARD members that they actually surveyed, and they got a 43% response rate out of these residency programs. The most important credential that the chairs looked at when they hired somebody was how they performed on an interview, 86% of the time. Recommendations of colleagues counted the second most at 72%, and the residency program's directions only counted for 52%. Everything else goes down from there. So how you do the interview and how you're looked upon by your colleagues counts. If we actually look at skills or attributes of new hires, and this is from the chairs who are doing the hiring, there's a myth that it's all about publications. As you can see here, it's not that case at all. The most important thing, as we talked about from the beginning, is what is your perceived level of subspecialty expertise in your area? Are you fellowship trained? And do you work well with your referrers, your clinical colleagues? Those are the three things that were the top three attributes of new hires ranked by radiology chairs. And again, publications was the lowest. Social media, 53% of chairs said it impacted their decision, even in academics, if the junior radiologists that they hired had skills in social media. Size does matter. If you're joining an academic practice with less than 50 radiologists, more of the chairs were going to actually be impacted by whether or not you had social media skills to offer. Many fellowship values in the current ABR model ranked by radiology chairs. Breast imaging, body, and neuro were the three that were valued the most in terms of categories of specialty that were looked upon favorably for many fellowships for chairs who were hiring. In terms of the new ABR structure, what impact would that have? 25%, or 1 out of 4 chairs, said the salary would be impacted. 65% of those who said the salary would be impacted to say be reduced, especially in smaller departments. 90%, 9 out of 10 of the chairs said even though they were academics, they would not designate study time for junior faculty when they joined. When we look at recruitment tools ranked by chairs in terms of what was important, again, if you were a prior resident, so if they know you and they know what your personality is and how you work with people, that mattered. And then other things like journal ads and academic networks and all these things, and word of mouth was fourth. But you can see the importance of recruitment tools. Private practice, we are all moving from a value-based to value-based model. So the days of eating what you kill are slowly fading, and being able to show quality is where healthcare has now been, and we're in the midst of that transition for almost a decade. So the question is, when you join a private practice, you may want to get a flavor of the culture there by talking to people or doing some reconnaissance work. Is this a clinical productivity-oriented practice, or is this a practice that interests value, or often it's both? And if it is value-based, some of the, how should I say, more senior radiologists in their era may not have had training in areas like efficiency, quality, speed, and cost simultaneously, and understanding the metrics and outcomes that are associated with that. And I can think of 3 junior radiologists off my head because during their fellowship, they actually demonstrated their ability to work in different areas like workflow efficiency, patient satisfaction score improvement, and social media, and how they're able to generate referrals. We're able to leverage that in terms of marketing themselves for future positions. Leverage your skills. If you have a specific practice target in mind, try and address a void if necessary, or if available, whether it's breast MR, SPECT CT, what have you that they need. If there's one message that you walk away with today, understand the 3 A's that applied in my generation when you applied for radiology of being available, able, and affable is not enough. This is just table stakes at the poker game now. If you want to be above the crowd, think along the dimensions of how you're going to make yourself affordable, aligned, and accountable no matter what the practice setting, but especially in private practice where there's more pressures. Lastly, a few words about a consolidation in the employed model. Eric Stern wrote a really nice summary of the open microphone session at the American College of Radiology in 2016, where they talked about the forces of consolidation which are not going away. The forces include payer consolidation, hospital consolidation, physician practice consolidation, changing payment models, and disruptive technologies. And we can see trends across the country. The HR Commission repeatedly has shown the vanishing number of groups across the country now because of these consolidation. The benefits are economies of scale, larger capital funds for IT investment. You can have data often implicated in QCDRs, which can be used for the MIPS payment models that have replaced the sustainable growth rate. Certified electronic health records are expensive. Larger groups can often afford them. And you can leverage your size for negotiation. All these are the benefits of consolidation. On the individual level, benefits for the radiologists who choose the employed models. And again, I've been there. The stable salary, the relaxed stresses of running a practice, not having to deal with that like you do in private practice, less frequent call. Subspecialization sometimes is more sought after, and you can practice more of that subspecialty if you choose. Flexible scheduling hours, and even leadership training. We're hearing more and more from our radiologists who are choosing the employment model that they look at that as a benefit. Limitations, there's loss of autonomy, lack of published data, but use your network as much as you can to find out about a job and do your homework. All of that matters. So to recap, we talked about the ACR HR survey, skills that you can use irrespective of what type of practice you're looking at, things to think about to leverage yourself in the academic world, private practice, and employment model. Remember one thing that you're going to probably have to prioritize. Not everybody gets everything they want. These are some of the things that many of us are looking for in our careers, right? Professional career that's formidable, location, income, lifestyle, job security, but you're unlikely to get everything. So tough decisions are ahead. We've been through it. Many of us have survived. You will too. I wish you well in your transitions. Thank you.